Well, there's been a lot of people that have been very upset with Disney and how they have changed their DAS system, which is their Disability Access Pass, and how they have been much more strict in terms of the passes that they're handing out, and people that are, in my opinion and many people's opinion, rightfully deserving of getting a DAS pass are being denied. And a lot of people have been felt very frustrated with this. Well, there's a story here we have from WWNT that talks about a guest with terminal cancer was denied disability access pass at Disneyland Resort. And I figured let's read through this article, get some thoughts on it, and talk about it. So, hi, I'm Jared with Capture the Magic. And again, this is in WWNT. It says guests with terminal cancer denied disability access pass at Disneyland Resort. It says, according to a post shared by this person's daughter on TikTok, the video posted by Jazzy as user LovelyJ17 shows her and her family walking away from the accessibility services kiosk in the Disneyland Esplanade after failing to obtain the disability access service pass for her father, who has terminal cancer. A woman, presumably the girl here, Jazzy, speaks in the video, though it is difficult to hear over the audio playing, but she does say, they said if you don't have autism, you can't get a disability pass. And we have seasonal passes, and they still treat inaudible here like crap. And Jazzy says that she and her family have passes to Disneyland Resort. According to the caption, Jazzy's father has terminal cancer and has a difficulty sitting and standing for long periods of time without pain. The suggested accommodation instead of the disability access service was for the group to utilize the return to queue option, in which the DAS ineligible member of the party would wait outside of the attraction while the rest of their party wait in the traditional queue before having the other guests join them later in line. The caption goes into greater detail about their experience, citing that the cast member was rude and proceeded to walk away within seconds after telling the group they would not be helping if they were filming. And it's hard to hear in the video, but the caption of it says the worker was rude, told me she would not help me if I was recording, then proceeded to walk away within seconds without even seeing that I was recording. My dad cannot do many things since being diagnosed with cancer, and one of our few outlets is Disneyland. My dad cannot stand or sit for long periods of time without feeling discomfort or pain. He is the one paying for the passes, which are not cheap. Disneyland refused to give him disability access because they said it only is for autistic people. We come to spend family time away from home and hospital. The only accommodation they gave us was to have my dad sit and wait outside the ride while we all get in line together. It's absolutely crazy to me that they will dismiss any sickness, condition, or illness, even if it's terminal. Just because you are not autistic does not mean you do not need accommodations. It does not make sense how much money you spend here just for them to treat you like you mean nothing. Disneyland and Disney World Resort both changed their disability access service requirements earlier this year, only offering accommodations to guests with developmental disability like autism or similar disorder who are unable to wait in conventional queue for an extended period of time. Disney officials previously stated the updates were made due to overuse of this service. Guests who are caught lying to obtain DAS will be permanently banned from the parks. Disabled guests and allies have spoken out against these changes, with the DAS Defenders Group setting up a petition online, organizing visibility events on both coasts, and paying for a mobile billboard during D23. This isn't the first time that guests have taken their stories of negative experiences in trying to obtain DAS to the internet. A video of a guest pleading with Disney to offer a paid alternative to DAS went viral this summer. Disabled guests were told to practice waiting in line, and most recently, a guest with narcolepsy shared her story of visiting Disneyland without DAS on TikTok. This is not a good look. The way that Disney has gone about this, I will say, is interesting. So Disney, and this happened earlier in the summer, they had talked about they changed their DAS system because of rampant abuse. And apparently they had known about this abuse for a very long time and apparently had let it go on, which is the part that is I find very interesting, is they knew apparently for years and years about all this rampant abuse of the system, and people people just saying, oh, they have IBS or they have some issues, they have anxiety, and they would get a DAS and they could use it all day. And those people were clogging up the Genie Plus lines, now the Lightning Lane lines. And that was what was causing a lot of the issues. So they got more strict on it, which I'm not against that necessarily, but what they seemingly changed it to, and I've never heard an employee actually say specifically you have to have autism to get it, but it has been rather understood that for the most part, the DAS system is being given, or passes are being given to people with autism or similar disorders. But what seems to be left out are people like this who have terminal cancer, who have, legitimate medical issues that are not able to utilize the DAS system, which I do find uh, in the spirit of what DAS is, it shouldn't just be for people who have autism. It should also be for people who have physical disabilities. Now, I understand not wanting people to cheat the system. And again, for Disney, this is a financial incentive. So for a lot of these people, what they're trying to do is get them to buy Lightning Lane, essentially. And a lot of people may not want to hear that, but I do think that a lot of this is a financial motivation to sell more Lightning Lanes. And again, there's other stories like this over here in the Los Angeles Times. Disneyland fans with disabilities enraged by changes. They say they had the worst day ever there. Less than 2 hours after being dropped off at the most magical place on earth, Florida resident Paula Rowland tearfully called her husband to take her and their son Noah home. That June 5th was supposed to be a once in a lifetime experience at Disney World's Magic Kingdom. But days earlier, Noah, a nonverbal autistic child with sensory processing disorder, had been denied Disney's Disability Access Service. The 8-year-old struggles to stand in line for more than 15 minutes. In the past, would have provided him with shorter wait times at attractions. Shortly after entering Disney World and attempting to wait in line with his family, Noah suffered an autistic meltdown. Says it's an involuntary, intensely emotional response to an overwhelming situation. He spent most of his time at the park being soothed by his mother inside a gift shop. She said, "It's hard to come back from that," Roland said. "We had the worst day ever there." The child joins various individuals the Times spoke to who say they were denied a DAS pass after Disney changed the program earlier this year to eliminate overuse and potential abuse of the popular system. Some feel betrayed by the company known for its inclusivity and are reconsidering patronizing the parks. Others have gone a step further, questioning whether Disney's DAS policy complies with the law. Disney says it does comply. Says Rosie Kaiser said she cried and shook during her DAS screening outside Disneyland on July 14th. Cast member she spoke with was kind and patient, she said, but the questions were deeply personal. Still, she was able to obtain the pass, allowing her to board some rides outside the regular line. She said she was, quote, one of the lucky ones. Kaiser was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2007, became permanently disabled in 2009. She said she struggled to leave her house, calling herself a hermit. But in 2015, after watching old family movies of the Main Street Electrical Parade, she vowed to return to the park for the first time since 1988. Since then, she's visited a dozen times. She goes, "You do have to beg for the service," Kaiser said of the DAS interview process. A Disneyland spokesperson said changes to DAS were necessary because of overuse. The company said usage of the system had tripled since 2019, though Disney did not respond to requests for specific figures. The spokesperson, who asked not to be named because of Disney policy, said the DAS pass was just one of several accommodations Disney offers, but would not comment on whether the company felt the system was being abused. Examples of misconduct to avoid Disneyland's notorious lines date before DAS, when guests with previous versions of disability accommodations reportedly sold access to healthy families. Which is true. They were like people who had disabilities were selling their services. Like people could basically rent them to get in the front of the line. That was something that did happen years ago. Going to say here, there's a group called the DAS Defenders. They say by excluding many disabled individuals from these cherished experiences, Disney sends a clear message that the rights and needs of the disabled community can be overlooked. They have 31,000 signatures. DAS Defenders claim Disney is now excluding cancer patients, veterans with PTSD, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, and those with rare diseases and more. A Disney spokesperson said other accommodations exist to meet the needs of guests who have disabilities but are rejected for the pass. According to the park's website, those include a sensory experience guide to indicate which parts of the park have loud noises, darkness, and bumpiness, which rides are fast and which lift off the ground. Disney also offers sign language interpreters, wheelchair and scooter rentals, assistive handheld captioning and video captioning on some rides, and dialogue and narration of script of others. It says park accommodations also include allowing a stroller to carry a disability tag that permits it to be pushed through the standby lines. Otherwise, strollers have to be parked with riders while riders stand in the queue. And they're going to say they've made an accommodation and arrangement for certain populations, says Laura Rothstein and Julia Arzik, who they are a mother-daughter legal team, co-author Disabilities and the Law, and don't have any realistic, reasonable accommodation mechanism for other disabilities. Rothstein said that ADA requires an individualized assessment of a reasonable accommodation request and an equitable discussion before making a determination. She feels the DAS pass interview process is lacking because Disney does not accept medical paperwork. A Disneyland spokesperson said that Disney understands its obligations under all applicable laws, including the ADA, and are in compliance. The DAS overhaul is personal for Irzik, I believe, may I say her name, a Sherman Oaks-based talent agent an attorney who specializes in special education law and employment discrimination. She's afflicted with lupus and degenerative disc disease. She successfully fought for a DAS pass in October. She frequently visits the park masked and in a wheelchair and says Disney policy already bans DAS pass cheaters for life. Both her and Rothstein also say Disney should revise its policy of mandating that parties purchase tickets, which are non-refundable, before applying for a DAS pass. That much I completely agree with, because you have people buying passes, and if they get denied DAS, they essentially are saying they can't go, which that system that needs to be tweaked for sure. I will completely agree there. They think it's unfair for families to arrange a trip, spending hundreds or perhaps thousands of dollars, and then be denied a pass. A Disney spokesperson said guests can discuss services, including DAS passes, up to 30 days ahead of the visit. Yeah, another story here says every half hour for 7 hours, Farah Evigways refreshed her smartphone screen as she waited for her DAS appointment. She finally got the interview, was denied a pass, and told to have a magical day. Undeterred, she repeated the process the next day with the same results. 7 hours is nearly twice as long as the 42-year-old single mother spends in a chemotherapy session. After the second rejection, there were tears from her and her daughter, Brooklyn. The girl vowed to never go to Disneyland again. She said during the interview, she was told by a cast member that in lieu of DAS privileges, her 8-year-old could wait in line alone under the return to queue option for some rides. On others, they could use the location return time accommodation. Evigways got her cancer diagnosis in February and was given 6 months to live. She underwent surgery to remove tumors in 16 places and around her stomach and intestines. She often has trouble standing, moves with a walker, and needs frequent breaks. Despite not getting a DAS pass, she visited Disneyland with her daughter in July. When the pair reached Space Mountain, they were told only the return to queue service was available. Evigway said the accommodation was not possible since she didn't want to leave her daughter alone in line. She pleaded at the ride. She was sent to the DAS booth outside the park entrance gate and then to Disneyland City Hall, where she was rejected for a pass again. She said, "This used to be a very magical place for me." Evigways said, "I don't know when my last trip will be, but if this is it, it was a terrible way to finish." Obviously, when it comes to the DAS pass, it's a touchy situation. And I can at the same time understand, and I don't doubt that people were cheating the system before. But when you have people that have terminal cancer, they have multiple sclerosis, they have other diseases and limitations. For those people to not be granted access or given a DAS pass seems absolutely asinine. I understand, like, I'm not against kids with autism having it, and I understand the disabilities and the challenges that they have, but to act like there's only one group of people that need that and people with physical disabilities don't need it, I just think that's crazy. I just think that is, as a corporation, especially Disney, that tries to be this, happy place and all this stuff like that, it comes across as being greedy, because it seems like what they're telling most of these people is, well, you don't get the DAS pass, but buy the lightning lane. And it just seems, if you're going to have a DAS system, and while yes, you need to have a system in place where you can cut down on the fraud, because I'm sure that is an aspect of this, but when you are denying people multiple times with terminal cancers, and even some kids with autism, like the story here where they actually have autism, what the system is created for, and they get denied, it just turns what otherwise should be a good trip into potentially a nightmare for these people. And the idea too that an 8-year-old is going to wait in line by themselves. Like, I have an 8-year-old daughter. There's no way I'm going to let her stand in line by herself, even at a thing, even at Disney World, to do something like that. That is not a solution. This is coming from people who don't have kids, or I'm imagining. I just, that to me is a complete non-starter. Disney has gotten a lot of flack for this, and I think rightfully so in a lot of places. You can both cut down on the abuse of a system, but also have a system where people who are actually physically disabled can use the system as it was intended for. A lot of people complain about Universal system at first because they changed their system a little bit before Disney did, but they outsourced it to a third party. They ask for actual medical documents, and then the third party makes a determination. And theirs, while at first a lot of people said it was kind of more strict, it's much more lax, and they give out the passes more than Disney does. Disney's system is this hybrid system where they have another company as a consultant there, but essentially the final decision is made by a Disney cast member. So you have somebody making a decision on medical needs or disabilities that isn't, they're not somebody who has a license for this. They're not experienced in this. They can consult with somebody that is, but they're making the final decision. It seems to me that the system is just too strict right now. And I thought all along maybe it would loosen up. And you hear some stories here and there that it is. But again, you see these stories about people that have terminal cancer, and you would think that's a no-brainer. Those people can get a DAS pass for that, considering the circumstances, and they're being denied multiple times. And in many cases, they're claiming they're being, dealt with very rudely. I do think Disney's system, they need to just do what Universal did and completely outsource it to a third party, and a party that is able to make these determinations. And if you're wanting to cut down on the amount of fraud, that system to me makes the most sense, because you have to submit paperwork. And while that can be a hassle, and I understand people don't want to share their medical information with third parties, at the same time, if you're dealing with a system where there's rampant abuse, the way to cut down on abuse is having to prove that somebody has a thing. So if you can prove, yeah, that this person here has terminal cancer, this person here has multiple sclerosis, and you can prove that, I think it should be a no-brainer that those people get DAS, and not just told, oh, go buy Lightning Lane, because that doesn't seem like, to me, a very heartfelt solution to the problem here. So these stories seemingly happen all the time. I mean, I could pull up 5 or 6 more that have been talked about. And I think from a PR standpoint, Disney's not doing themselves any favors. But again, they're pretty tone deaf when it comes to the PR side of things. But I think in terms of just the way the system is, it just seems almost heartless in ways. And, again, we have a podcast where we have a Disney and Universal version of the podcast. And a lot of listeners have told us that the DAS changes are making them maybe not even go back to the parks, because some people legitimately can't stand in line. A lot of people have hip problems. They have, a lot of issues where standing in lines does become a problem. And they're basically told, you can't get the DAS, like you'll have to make other accommodations. So while it's supposed to be for, physical disabilities and, people with autism, it seems that only one group is getting it. And even from this one story, this one group that's supposed to be designed for, they're even getting denied. If this system exists at all, an 8-year-old boy with autism, I'm thinking that's from their wording who this system is for. I really do hope Disney makes changes to this. And, you're not going to make everybody happy. And I understand that there are people, whenever you're trying to cut down on the amount of fraud, there are going to be people who get caught up that should rightfully get something, but maybe because of, cracking down on more, they don't. But I think as a whole, you can create a system to where it makes a bit more sense, and people who have legitimate medical issues and physical limitations are able to get a disability pass whenever, because again, this is the whole reason that this DAS system even exists. There's a lot of bad press out there about it. They're getting a lot of flack. So sometimes Disney reacts to that and sometimes they just don't. But as of now, if you are somebody who potentially needs to use the DAS system, if you're looking to go to Disney, you have to buy the tickets first and then talk to them. You have to do it ahead of time. So don't wait until you're there at the park to do it. You're going to be in for a long day there and a lot of headaches, I assume, to deal with this. We don't have any personal, experience with DAS. We have known people that do. And I know from speaking with those people and just seeing these cases here and these stories that the system has gotten very difficult to obtain, even if you have legitimate medical issues. But we'll have to wait and see. But that is going to be it for this video. If you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do lots of coverage here of Disney World, Universal Studios, Epic Universe, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, what do you think about the changes to the DAS system? And does that change the way that you may potentially look at going to a Disney theme park? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.